In the history classrooms of high schools and colleges of today, we are taught about individuals who have brought about great changes in society and bettered life for those of different races, colors, and creeds. However, many places fail to credit persons either of the LGBT community or those who have made sterling contributions to it. This is the first part of a 6-part series of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender history around the world. We start off in Europe, a continent hailed as the center of Western civilization since the rise of the Roman Empire. Our journey through Europe begins in the region of Scandinavia, which brings us to our first subject, Queen Christina of Sweden. Christina was born in Stockholm, and her birth occurred during a rare astrological conjunction that fueled great speculation on what influence the child, fervently hoped to be a boy, would have later on the world stage. Reportedly, she was so hairy and large that the midwives in fact prematurely called out that a boy had been born. Her gender identity was never clear-cut. Even as a child, she was educated in the manner typical of men and frequently wore men's clothes. Her father gave orders that Christina should be brought up as a prince. Even as a child, she displayed great precociousness. In 1649, when she was 23, she invited the philosopher René Descartes to Sweden to tutor her. Christina's short reign was controversial, and literature circulated during her lifetime that described her as participating in multiple affairs with both men and women. This, along with the emotional letters that she wrote to female friends, has caused her to become an icon for both the lesbian and transgender community. Christina abdicated her throne on June 5, 1654, in favor of her cousin Charles Gustave, claiming to do so based on wanting to freely worship the Catholic faith. In truth, Christina knew that with retirement, she could devote herself wholly to art and science, and the opportunity of astonishing the world by the unique spectacle of a great queen in the prime of her life, voluntarily resigning her crown, strongly appealed to her imagination. It is certain that towards the end of her reign, she behaved as if she were determined to do everything in her power to make herself as little missed as possible. From 1651, there was a notable change in her behavior. She cast away every regard for the feelings and prejudices of her people. She exhibited her contempt for the Protestant religion. Her foreign policy was flighty to the verge of foolishness. She contemplated an alliance with Spain, a state quite outside the orbit of Sweden's influence, the first fruits of which were to have been an invasion of Portugal. She utterly neglected affairs in order to plunge into a whirl of dissipation with her foreign favorites. The situation became impossible, and it was with an intense feeling of relief that the Swedes saw her depart in masculine attire under the name of Count Dona. The complex character of Christina of Sweden has inspired numerous plays, books, and operatic works. August Strindberg's 1901 Christina depicts her as a protean and impulsive creature. "Each one gets the Christina he deserves," she remarks. The most famous fictional treatment is the classic feature film Queen Christina in 1933. It starred Greta Garbo, another complex female Swedish character who was herself suspected of being lesbian. Another feature film, The Abdication, starred the Norwegian actress Liv Ullmann and was based on a play by Ruth Wolff. We move now to France and our next historical figure, the Chevalier d'Eon de Beaumont. The Chevalier d'Eon de Beaumont was born in Tonnerre. Her father, Louis d'Eon de Beaumont, was an attorney, and her mother, Françoise de Chavesson, was a noblewoman. Most of what we know about D'Eon's early life comes from her biography, and its reliability is questionable. She later claimed that she had been born a girl, but that she was raised as a boy because her father could inherit his in-laws' property only if he would have a son. D'Eon excelled in school and graduated 1749 from the Collège Mazarin in Paris. She worked as the secretary of the administrator of the fiscal department and as a royal censor. In 1756, D'Eon joined the secret network of spies that worked only for King Louis XV. The monarch sent her on a secret mission to Russia in order to meet Empress Elizabeth, and intrigue with the pro-French faction against the Habsburg monarchy. Later tales claim that she disguised herself as a lady, Leah de Beaumont, to do so, and that she became a maid of honor to the Empress. D'Eon's career in Russia is the subject of one of Valentin Picoulo's novels. In 1761, D'Eon returned to France. The next year she became a captain of dragoons under the Marshal de Broglie and fought in the later stages of the 7 Years' War. She was wounded and received a Cross of Saint Louis, which gave her the rank of Chevalier. In 1763, D'Eon became plenipotentiary minister in London and spied for the king. She collected information for a potential invasion. She formed connections with English nobility by sending them the produce of her own vineyards. When she was about to lose the post of plenipotentiary, she complained and eventually decided to disobey orders to return to France. In her letter to the king, she claimed that the new ambassador had tried to drug her. In 1764, she published most of the secret diplomatic correspondence about her recall. In 1766, Louis XV granted her a pension for her services and gave her a 12,000 livres annuity. She continued to work as a spy, but she lived in political exile in London. Despite the fact that D'Eon wore her dragoon's uniform all the time, there were rumors that she was actually a woman. A betting pool was started on the London Stock Exchange regarding her gender. In 1771, after the death of Louis XV, D'Eon tried to negotiate her return to France. She also claimed that physically she was not a man, but a woman, and demanded that the government recognize her as that sex. King Louis XVI and his court complied, demanding that she wear women's clothing. D'Eon agreed, especially when the king granted funds for a new wardrobe. In 1777, D'Eon returned to France and afterwards lived as a woman. When France began to help the American revolutionaries during the American War of Independence, D'Eon requested to be able to help French troops in America. Because she was now legally a woman, her request was denied, and she was jailed below the castle of Dijon for 19 days, and spent the following 6 years with her mother in Tonnerre. In 1779, D'Eon published her memoirs in La vie militaire, politique et privée de Mademoiselle D'Eon. They were ghostwritten by a friend named La Fortelle, and are probably embellished. Chevalier D'Eon died in London. Doctors who examined her after her death discovered that her body was indeed anatomically male. Continuing in France, we come to Jean-Jacques Roger de Combeferre, Duke of Parma. The Duke of Parma was a French lawyer and statesman, best remembered as the author of the Code Napoleon, which still forms the basis of French law. Combeferre was born at Montpellier in southern France into a family of legal nobility. In 1774, he graduated in law and succeeded his father as counselor in the Montpellier Court of Accounts and Finances. He was a staunch supporter of the French Revolution in 1789 and was elected as an extra deputy to represent the nobility of Montpellier at the meeting of the Estates General at Versailles, but since the delegation was not increased, he never took his seat. In 1792, he represented the Department of Hérault in the convention which assembled and proclaimed the First French Republic in September 1792. In revolutionary terms, Combeferre was a moderate. During the trial of Louis XVI, he protested that the convention did not have the power to sit as a court, and demanded that the king should have due facilities for his defense. Nevertheless, when the trial proceeded, he voted with the majority that declared Louis to be guilty, but recommended that the penalty should be postponed until it could be ratified by a legislative body. In 1793, Combeferre became a member of the Committee of General Defense, but was not a member of its famous successor, the Committee of Public Safety, until the end of 1794, during the Thermidorian reaction after the Reign of Terror had ended. In the meantime, he worked on much of the legislation of the Revolutionary period. During 1795, he was also employed as a diplomat and negotiated peace with Spain. It is widely believed that Combeferre is responsible for decriminalizing homosexuality in France. His sexual orientation was well known, and he does not seem to have made any effort to conceal it. He remained unmarried and kept to the company of other bachelors. Napoleon is recorded as making a number of jokes on the subject. During the consulate, Bonaparte, Combeferre, and Third Consul Charles-François Lebrun were known as he, she, and it. Before the French Revolution, sodomy had been a capital crime under royal legislation. The penalty was burning at the stake. The National Constituent Assembly abolished the law against sodomy when it revised French criminal law in 1791. Since there was no public debate, we do not know its motives. A similar state of affairs occurred during the early years of the Russian Revolution. However, Napoleonic officials could and did repress public expressions of homosexuality using other laws, such as offenses against public decency. But despite police surveillance and harassment, the Revolutionary and Napoleonic period was a time of relative freedom and opened the modern era of legal toleration for homosexuality in Europe. Napoleonic conquest imposed the principles of Napoleon's penal code, including the decriminalization of homosexuality, on many other parts of Europe, including Belgium, the Dutch Netherlands, the Rhineland, and Italy. Other states freely followed the French example. Next up, famous British poet, Winston Hugh Auden, known more commonly as W.H. Auden. W.H. Auden was born in York and spent his early childhood in Harborne, Birmingham. From the age of 8, Auden was sent to boarding schools, firstly at Edmund School in Surrey, and later Gresham School in Norfolk, but he returned to Birmingham for the holidays. He was educated at Christ Church, Oxford University, but took only a third-class degree. Around this time, Auden realized that he was different from his fellow students. However, as to not earn their disrespect, Auden masked his true self in public. After Oxford, he went to live for a year in Weimar, Berlin, in whose tolerant atmosphere his homosexuality could be more openly expressed. From 1930 to 1932, he taught at the Larchfield Academy in Helensburgh, Scotland, where he wrote most of his 1932 volume, The Orators, with the innovative usage of both poetry and prose. From 1932 to 1935, he was employed at Downes School, where he wrote some of his best-known early poems, including Out on the Lawn I Lie in Bed.
Out on the lawn I lie in bed, Vega conspicuous overhead, in the windless nights of June. Forest of green have done complete the day's activity, my feet point to the rising moon.
Soon afterwards, in 1935, he made a marriage of convenience to Erika Mann, lesbian daughter of the great German novelist Thomas Mann, in order to provide her with a British passport to escape the Third Reich. They shook hands after the ceremony, and rarely saw each other again, but remained friendly and never bothered to divorce. In 1939, Auden immigrated to the United States. This move away from Britain 9 months before the beginning of World War II, was seen by many as a betrayal, and his poetic reputation suffered briefly as a result. Soon after arriving in New York, he gave a public reading, at which he met the poet Chester Kalman for the first time. Kalman was to be his lover for a period of 2 years, but remained his companion for the rest of his life, and the two shared houses and apartments for most of the period from 1953 until Auden's death in 1973, though the relationship was often troubled. During the last year of his life, he moved back from New York to Oxford, but again summered in Austria. His last public appearance was a reading at the Palais Palffy in Vienna on September 28, 1973. He died that same night or early the next morning. He was buried near his summer home in Kirchstetten, Austria. His 1947 poem, The Age of Anxiety, provided the basis of a symphony by Leonard Bernstein. The symphony includes no vocal music, but the mood and themes of the movements were suggested by the poem. His poem, Hymn to the United Nations, was commissioned by the United Nations Secretary-General U Thant, who also commissioned a setting for the poem by Pablo Casals. Casals conducted the first performance in 1971, but the work was never adopted officially by the United Nations. His poem, Victor, served as the basis for a song of the same name on Rush guitarist Alex Lifeson's 1996 solo album, also titled Victor. Auden wrote a considerable body of criticism and essays, as well as co-authoring some drama with his friend Christopher Isherwood, but he is primarily known as a poet. Auden's work distinguishes itself by exceptional variety, ranging from such rigorous traditional forms as the villanelle to original yet intricate forms, as well as the technical and verbal skills Auden displayed regardless of form. He was also partly responsible for reintroducing the Anglo-Saxon accentual meter to English poetry.
And today we still see fine examples of historical figures in the LGBT community of Europe. Linda Below is a British, black, Jewish lesbian activist and former London politician. Below was born to a Jewish mother and a Nigerian-born father, and was raised in Brixton. In 1970, she married and gave birth to 2 children. In 1974 and 1976, but came out in 1980. Her marriage ended in divorce in 1983. Below was the first black woman to join the Spare Rib Feminist Collective in 1981. She was vice chair of the successful Black Section campaign to select African, Caribbean, and Asian parliamentary and local candidates within the Labour Party. In 1985, Below was elected as a Labour councillor for Lambeth Council and became leader of the council between 1986 and 1988. She was the second black woman to become leader of a British local authority, after Merle Amory in the northwest London borough of Brent. Below resigned as leader on 21st of April 1988 after disputes within the Labour Party over the setting of the council budget, and losing support among the black community in Lambeth. She was a prominent figure in left-wing politics in London in the 1980s and was labelled by The Sun as a member of the loony left. Below now runs her own consultancy, Diversity Solutions Limited, together with her partner Caroline Jones, providing solutions to improve equality and diversity outcomes within the commercial, public, and voluntary sectors. They recently joined designers Tony Malone and John Marsh to create the venture Design for Diversity. Below is co-chair of the Southwark LGBT Network and advisor to Southwark Council and the Metropolitan Police. On the 9th of December 2002, she was presented, together with Stephen Bourne, with the Metropolitan Police Volunteer Awards in recognition of outstanding contribution in supporting the local community. On the 21st of December 2005, she and her partner were among the first couples to sign a civil partnership in the UK. The ceremony took place among family and friends at Southwark Registry Office. She has accomplished many firsts in her fight for equality, notably originating Black History Month in the UK, while chair of the London Strategic Policy Union. Below continues her work today, with mainstreaming equality and diversity within the British Army and the Metropolitan Police Service. She's an independent advisor to the Metropolitan Police, the Crown Prosecution Service, and the Association of Chief Police Officers, and acts in a scrutiny role on equality and diversity issues for a number of public bodies. Another prominent individual in today's movement is Germany's Volker Beck, a German politician, specifically a Green Party representative in the Bundestag, first as their Speaker for Legal Affairs, and now as the Green Party whip. He is the Member of Parliament representing Cologne and was re-elected as MP and whip in September 2005. He is also a famous homosexual figure. For over 10 years, he was the spokesman of the Association of Lesbians and Gays in Germany, Lesben- und Schwulenbund in Deutschland, the LSVD, and is well known for his campaign for gay marriage. He is also often referred to as the father of the German Registered Partnership Act. He has struggled for equal rights for gay couples since the 1980s. Currently, he is sponsoring an anti-discrimination act in civil law and at the workplace, outlawing discrimination based on race, ethnic origin, sex, sexual identity, religion, age, and disability. Just recently, on his initiative, the German Bundestag decided that the Federal Republic of Germany will erect a national memorial for the homosexuals persecuted during the Nazi era. It will be erected in the center of Berlin. He is also an important figure in recompensation for victims of National Socialism. He negotiated the foundation Remembrance, Responsibility, and Future, slave labor recompensation. He was honored by President Rao on the advice of Jewish organizations as Knight of the Distinguished Service Cross. Beck also supported the Holocaust Memorial and is a member of the Federal Foundation, which erected the memorial. Equality Forum recognized Beck in 2005 as one of 40 heroes for his extraordinary contributions towards GLBT equality. He is the only non-North American who is honored. In 2001, the International Network of Lesbian and Gay Officials, INLGO, honored his work for the gay and lesbian civil rights movement in Germany with the Like a Rock Award. In the same year, the Berlin Gay Pride Festival honored him with the Rainbow Award. Between 2001 and 2004, he was chief negotiator for his party on the new immigration law coming into force in 2005. He is publicly known for being a very tough negotiator. On May 27, 2006, Beck was attacked and injured by right-wing extremists during a gay rights demonstration in Moscow. Police witnessed the assault and did nothing to stop it. Thankfully, the injuries were reported as non-life-threatening, and Beck can continue his work as a modern-day equal rights activist.
Hey, would you like to see all this information and more taught in your schools? If so, please visit our MySpace for further information about what can be done. Come help support SB 1437, the Bias-Free Schools Curriculum Act.